Hello everyone, and welcome to our webinar this afternoon. We have a large group of people signed up for today, which is terrific news. And I'd like to welcome today Colin McKeown. Colin McKeown is of Whitespace, and Colin started off life as a graphic designer and is now everything that I think is absolutely fabulous, including user experience and all we would need to know about how we present our companies, ourselves, and today he's going to talk about the importance of packaging. And I'm delighted to have him here today because in this COVID situation that we're all in now, packaging was always important, but now has become increasingly important. So with that, I'd like to hand you over to Colin. Welcome, Colin.
Thank you, Emer, and good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be with you. I've been lucky enough to be a mentor with DCCI for the last number of years. And one of the topics that continually comes up is packaging. And, depending on the scale of your business, depending on what you're making, depending on what you're doing, it can be an absolute minefield in terms of finding your way through the maze of options, what you do, what works, what doesn't work. So as a graphic designer, I suppose my instinct is always to deconstruct the problem and try and find ways that I can help in terms of, giving a route map to people as they take their packaging forward. Emer's already alluded to it. COVID has changed the game totally. The migration to the online world has been absolutely amazing. And obviously, one of the major considerations in that is packaging. There's nothing worse than your beautiful product that you've made and crafted and then sold online to arrive on somebody's doorstep. And it's rather sad, rather lonely because it's lost the box, etc., etc. I think we've all been there, and it's not a good place to be. Some things in life you can control, some things you can't. So today's presentation is going to talk a little bit about topics, things you should consider. And then I'm just going to talk about some examples, things that I consider to be good practice, things that I've seen from the ability to go to showcase each year, and perhaps things that, in my opinion, really are aimed at the user. So let's crack on. User experience is everything. And we live in a world now where no matter what you buy, no matter what you source, you will probably get some sort of review, which will come through on your phone or by email, and you're asked to give a criticism around the company, the product, how the service was, did the product meet with your expectations, etc., etc. Packaging is also perhaps one of the details that they ask for increasingly. How was it packaged? Was it safe? Was it secure? So for me, the starting point of any communications, any branding for any business, doesn't matter whether it's craft, whether it's design, whether it's in the general business arena, it's really looking after user experience. How do people find you, your products, and more importantly, how can they get hold of them? And do they feel that it was a good value proposition, that they ended up with something that they valued and were really looking forward to receiving? Now, just to go back on the point you made about you can control a lot of things, some things you can't control. This arrived on my doorstep probably 2 months ago, and it was a nice surprise. Initially, I thought, I wonder who it's from, but let's just leave it there. But for a lot of you, this is where your package will end up. With social distancing, couriers, postmen are very reluctant to actually hand things over. So they tended to leave them in places that you can find them. So essentially, this is your product out in the real world, or an example of a product out in the real world. I've blanked in my address, by the way, just in case somebody thinks there's a grey box over the label. Just mentioned, COVID really accelerated online sales. And for me, the packaging aspect of what you do can build a very different customer relationship in respect of how good it is, how it understands what people are looking for, etc., etc. Customers react positively when a product matches their expectations. There's nothing worse than saying something online on a website looks fantastic, and then it arrives and you have that feeling of, oh, that wasn't really what I thought I was going to get. So well-designed packaging can enhance that positive experience. So why is it important? Well, I feel it enhances your product and your brand offering. Essentially, it ensures postage protection for the item you're selling. If you're doing ceramics, you're doing glass, obviously there's demands of how you get that through a postal system, which you can't control, and enable the end result to be a successful one for the customer. It attracts attention to your brand and product. I always think of Apple iPhone when I think of this particular sentence, because there's no doubt that when iPhone came out and it was that beautiful box and you lifted the lid and you looked and you peeled back, I mean, it was just the most wonderful experience. And I think mobile phone makers and producers are fabulously good at packaging, which just works, which really enhances the experience of, you know, receiving your new phone. I think it can separate you from the competition, and packaging provides another opportunity to build your relationship with the buyer. And we're going to be talking about how you might do that later in the presentation. So essentially, where will your package take your customer experience? Will it be positive? Will it be negative? Will it actually get people to come back? Who knows? Let's see. This may be the first time due to COVID that customers actually handled your product physically, unless they know someone who perhaps has bought it and they've tested it themselves. But in a lot of cases, they've seen it online, they've bought it, they've paid their money, and for the first time, they're seeing it in real life. So good packaging presents your product in the best light. Bad packaging tends to give the person a bit of a, oh no, is that it? So well-designed packaging is what we're talking about. And I feel if the packaging is fantastic, it can also action repeat business. And I'm going to be talking about how you can do that in your particular areas as we go through. Connect your packaging to your website. The number of times I will talk to designer makers and they'll ask me about packaging, and there's no sign of a website address. There's no sign of any sort of indication that the person receiving the package could actually go on and look at the rest of the products. Very simple thing to do. Doesn't take an awful lot of money, but something that I would strongly urge you to build into your strategy and make sure your website is essentially the main hub of your communications at the minute. And increasingly being able to point people to it, being able to make them visit again, sets up a situation where you may well set up a repeat sale. I think the other thing is think about things like signing up for your network. Now, GDPR, which is the European directive around data and how you collect it and what you do with it, you've got to look into that. But essentially, encourage, perhaps through a postcard, through some sort of thing within the packaging, which gets people to think, you know what, I must go on and register the product, possibly, or I must go on and become part of the network. I like what this person does. I want to know more about them. I would like them perhaps to keep me, you know, in the loop in terms of new things that they're doing in the future. So that's what I mean about connect the packaging to the website. Communications today should be thought about as a big circle. The more you can connect, the more you can link. In theory, the more success you might have. Just touching on branding. I did a webinar back in July last year, and I talked about branding, giving your product a voice. And some people probably thought, what's he on about there? Don't quite understand that. But there is no doubt that a strong brand with a strong product is a very good formula for sales and moving your business forward. So if branding gives your product a voice, good packaging gives customers something else to recommend. If someone's buying your product as a gift, as a, something to be special around an event, the fact that it's packaged well, the fact that it arrives in pristine condition will only enhance them telling other people. So, for example, I think people buy for lots of reasons, but the more you can emotionally connect your packaging, your branding, and your story, the more chance you have of getting repeat business from those customers and recommendations to their friends and family. I always think this is the big thing, and I first add €1 for every time someone said, I just want a box with my name on it. And as a designer, I'm thinking, okay, we can get that to happen, but surely what we should be looking for is a box which functions well, a box which is made robustly, a box which protects the item, and a box which is of a sufficient size to do that, but also small enough so that it's not too expensive to send through the post. So as a designer, I always work on the old thing that I learned at art college about form following function. And my starting point for packaging, and what I would urge you to do, is just get a box, play with it, put the items in, see what works, what doesn't work. You will learn more doing that than suddenly thinking, I must have my logo in gold on the top of the lid. That will come later, but the starting point is focus on the practicalities of what you're trying to do. I think also if you major on the function, you will get a much better solution for your product to start with. If you major on the look, you will end up, in my opinion, perhaps not being as successful and having spent perhaps serious amounts of money and have a lot of boxes in a store or a shed, which perhaps don't really work very well for your product. So as I say, concentrate on function first and find the best solution to start with. In branding, we talk about touch points, and on the right, you will see a list of those touch points. At the minute, social media, the web, online would seem to be the major thing that's happening. And I'm sure we all wish that in the future we will get back to be able to go into shops and support retailers in a physical form. I yearn for being able to get back to the dock in Carrick-on-Shannon for a coffee and enjoying just being part of going around the design shop there, etc., etc. So at the minute, I feel packaging is just as important as your website, as your social media. If you like, it's the finishing piece to those elements. So considerations, I mean, what should you consider? Well, obviously size is pretty important. Size of the object, size of the product. The weight, is it fragile? If you're packaging glass, if you're packaging ceramics, something that's a little bit, it needs to be protected, it can be a very different packaging process from perhaps doing a scarf or, or jewelry or what have you. The other thing I would encourage is look at how the big retailers, Amazon, are, as you all know, one of the biggest companies on the planet. They're changing a lot of the things that we do. It always amazes me how the Amazon Prime boxes come, for example, and sometimes the box has one item in it, which is rattling around, and then they tend to stuff it with paper to try to take up the area that isn't being used. So it's quite interesting to perhaps think about an Amazon and think about your product and think, how would they send it? How would they get it across the world? Because I'm a great believer every day is a school day, but you know what? there's a quicker way to learn. There's a quicker way to learn if you perhaps look at people that do this every day. Amazon sending stuff is what they do. They're very good at it. Therefore, I think you can learn a lot in terms of your approach and how you develop your design in reaching a solution that will be good for you. The other one is obviously IKEA. Some people hate it, some people love it. But IKEA have made their name on flat pack furniture. And let's be honest, if you can send a wardrobe through the post, my goodness, you're bound to be able to send a piece of jewelry or, you know, a clothing or a scarf, a pot, whatever it happens to be. So I think in your research, take a very broad look at what's going on in the world, what works, look at the boxes, the thickness of the material, how they label them, etc., etc. I think postage is massive as well in terms of understanding postage, labeling, where the address will go, how the post person will put his sticker on it, etc., etc. On the package on the door, for example, beautiful package, beautiful pack, but it irks with me that the two postal labels are slightly skew with, but hey, I'm a graphic designer, that's what I do. So what I would suggest is take that into your thinking, leave an area where those elements can go so that they're actually accommodated. I think the other thing that sometimes people forget about is storing packaging. You order 1,000 boxes and suddenly the garage is full or the shed can't take the lawnmower anymore because you've nowhere to put this stuff. And I think it also becomes important because in the new future, when hopefully we'll be back into physical retailers, they can't accommodate hundreds of big boxes in their store for you. So again, are the packs flat? Do they get made up? Again, something that you might bear in mind. Production costs, obviously money is key in packaging. You can do it very expensive or you can do it more cost effective with good design thinking. And I would really urge to do that. Off-the-shelf solutions, sometimes people have a bit of an aversion to that. Oh, no, I want to make my own box. I want to blind emboss my logo. I want to put it in whatever. Always bear in mind that if you're starting from scratch, that can be the expensive option. Although there are some new ways of doing this, which I'll talk about later. The other thing that is major is obviously cardboard versus tin. Tin is more environmentally friendly because it doesn't go through the rigorous bleaching process that card does and paper does. So again, sometimes tin can be a wonderful option that you might consider. I think the other thing that has been a bit of a godsend for us is short-run digital printing solutions. And most of you may be aware of this, I'm sure, but the old days of life, though, you were going to be printing 3,000 labels to get 50. Nowadays, if you needed 49, they basically would print you 49. So the whole thing is it's short-run, you print to order, you don't keep in stock large runs of print, which effectively ties up money and also puts you in that position where if you want to change something, that there might be a bit of an issue. So keep it flexible, keep it responsive to the market and what you're doing. But I would really encourage you that if you work with a designer, that you go down that digital print route because it gives you the best flexibility going forward. The environment I've mentioned, there will always be environmental issues. We're coming up to Easter. I can still remember the Easter egg debate over size of the packaging against size of the egg when it actually emerged from the packaging. And it did get for a while extremely OTT. So again, you know, you don't want to be demonstrating that you're an organization that is into waste. Good brand stories are about helping the environment, being sensitive to the things that we have to deal with, etc., etc. Do I work with a designer? Absolutely. If you can afford it, I would really encourage you because I think graphic designers have an ability to know about print, how things are produced, how you can get more out of very little. And if you've got someone that can help you with that, I just think, again, it could really fast track the process. You may be someone that can do a lot of this yourself through research. And even if you work with a designer, I would encourage you to put together a mood board, things that you like, be part of the process. Just don't throw it over the wall and go, get on with that, I'll see you in 2 weeks. Really, really make sure that he's moving things, he or she, moving things the right way, and it's going in the way that you want. Just wanted to show you some things. Now, sometimes in packaging scale, obviously if you're a Zara, you can afford to print lots of boxes, produce them, etc., etc. If you're perhaps a small maker, you could do the little packaging solution on the left quite easily. And if you're talking to clients, and if clients are saying through your contact online or social media that it's, I'm looking for a gift for a niece or a nephew or what have you, they might say, you know, it's a special occasion, it's a birthday. Wouldn't it be lovely to perhaps have the little Polaroid where it's signed by yourselves? That may be something that, the one thing about Ireland, we have some fabulous countryside, and I know some of you live in the most stunning locations on the planet. So all I'm suggesting is that part of your little brand story may be to include a little Polaroid, a little message, something that when this thing arrives, there's something to remember it by other than just the product. On the right with Zara, I love this box. It came in from my other half and she left it on a chair, and I just thought, we can talk about recycling to the planet, you know, but at the end of the day, one sentence has completely sewn up their approach to the environment. So be strong, be positive, be gutsy about how you deal with things. And again, don't get too precious. I think brands are good when they respond to issues, when they're seen to live in the same world as everything else. And I think packaging gives you that opportunity on a slightly bigger scale to perhaps integrate that sort of thinking into your packaging. I was fortunate enough to see this a couple of years ago at Showcase, and fortunate enough to do a workshop where the guys were at. And let's be honest, it's just beautiful in my opinion. The product's beautiful. And then that lovely pure white, it reminds me so much of sort of Apple and iPhone and that thing. Beautiful little bit of simulator paper, nice label, blind embossed on the package. And then bottom right hand corner, there's a little storybook about the makers, the company, and what they do. So I think it's a great example of something that is incredibly well done, and I take my hats off to the guys. I met these guys a couple of years ago, and they were very fortunate because the husband and wife team have the most talented daughter who had gone through a marketing and design course, and she's been at the forefront of a sort of rebrand and new packaging for the products. And again, this was Showcase and their stand, but again, wonderful example of packaging. Beautiful when you pull the little ribbon and out comes the napkins. And again, it's just really taking the price point of that particular product right up. If you were buying that for somebody for a present, my goodness, they'll be delighted to actually receive it. Roth Louis over in Mayo, France has been working on a new rebrand. I do apologize because the packaging shot isn't fantastic. It was all I had, but again, coming back to this thing of linking, the logo, the colors, you look at the website, you can almost see the packaging. So it's all really fitting together. And that's what I mean about circular communications and really thinking the whole thing through. Once you have the branding, once you have the look and feel, let the packaging happen, and the rest should really work hard. So again, stunning product from Francis, great photography, and again, coming across as a really, really strong brand. Tidings, I had the pleasure of working with Niamh Gillespie down in Louth. And again, coming back to this point of developing a brand, I mean, Niamh is a highly talented designer. She produces stunning stuff. It was a pleasure to work with her. And then to see this being produced, her Instagram page, her website, and then the packaging in the bottom right-hand corner, absolutely stunning. And I think you can see what I'm talking about, that you see the packaging, you want to see the website, you want to see the Instagram feed. Effectively, that's what we're trying to do. Techniques, we talked about production, digital printing. It allows labels, other printed elements to be produced in short run formats. So if you're doing a promotion, you might be doing a 15% off if you sign up on the website. You can produce those little tickets, little cards, which can fit very nicely into your packaging box and be unique at a particular time of the year. I think it saves money. In fact, I know it'll save you money, and it'll obviously reduce space required for packaging materials. Talked about tin, some lovely examples of tin where you buy the tins themselves, and then you can integrate labels or have them printed, or they actually can do this thing in tin where they emboss it. So you can have like a blind embossed brand there if that's what you're looking for. I think the other thing about great packaging, people tend to keep it. The top of the wardrobe in the main bedroom in this house is got quite a few boxes which cannot be thrown out for at any cost, but it's purely things that Arlene has bought, and then she reuses the box to protect the item or just to have it. She likes the box, so she keeps it. I also think it can help you present your brand story. And again, when you pull that little ribbon and out comes that lovely simulator paper, which incidentally you can actually order online and have printed digitally. So again, you can order 25 sheets, you can order 50 sheets, 200, whatever you need with the label. So as I say, if you take that sort of approach, there's a way in which you can really streamline how you do packaging and how you can source it and how you can maintain the look and feel of your product. Love and Robots back in 2015. This was a pop-up shop just off Dam Street, and they were doing 3D clocks, jewelry, bow ties. They had the most wonderful orange box into which some of the stuff went. And you can probably see just by the young lady in the picture there, there's a lovely, lovely bag. And again, might be something you think about in terms of when we get physically back into shops, that you might say to the retailers that are stocking your product, I've got some really nice bags. Would you be aware of putting the thing into the bag? And again, great exposure for you and your product to customers. Sailing Drum, again, Sailing did a bit of makeover last year. So on the left was a showcase stand. On the right, there's a series of tubes into which Sailing puts prints. And again, the reason I included this was that that's a basic tube that Sailing got out of the local stationery shop. And then it just has rather a nice label. And well, as far as I'm concerned, it looks really, really strong. So sometimes a wee bit of thinking can really, really make something look fantastic in terms of the overall impression. Levado candles, this is actually a shot from the last time I was in the dock. And again, I loved the fact that the boxes were almost playing into the point of sale. And again, sometimes I go into craft design shops, the stuff's all over the place because no one's really thought about
how are we going to display this? And sometimes for retailers, it's great if the product can actually work as a display, as well as obviously physically taking care of the actual product when people buy it. So again, something to think about in terms of your development. Bird McNutt up in Donegal, you know, it speaks for itself. Beautiful, just punched out of a buff colored card, one color printing, shows the product. Hey, you know, it doesn't need to do any more. It's just confident. It's just superb, just like McNutt's product. Really, really good, and it matches beautifully. Again, sometimes taking that approach where you're taking a piece of card, you're folding it unusually, and then you're actually applying a label with the information about the product, how to care for it, a code, the name of it. That can be another great way of looking at packaging and keeping the cost down, but getting that feeling that you have a range of products from what you make. Again, just some examples of where labels have been applied. I think sometimes when people think about applying labels, they get a bad feeling of it will be peeling off. The way they're produced now, they're pretty good and they're very sticky. And it does allow you to have that flexibility of developing your package if you're developing a new range of products. Field Apothecary, again, a great example of packaging, point of sale, and that overall feel for the product. I love the plywood with those drawings of, they almost look like fields across the box. And again, labels being used on the glass jars. So again, lovely, simple approach. I think it looks very sophisticated, and again, just gives that wonderful impression of the product and the brand. Again, another example of jars. I mean, those jars are pretty bog standard, but again, probably working with the designer. We've got a beautiful label, 2-color, lovely typography, and the rest, it just compels you to want to buy, in my opinion. So the one thing with packaging is that it's a bit like websites, that as your sales grow, your packaging can change. You will perhaps have products which become very, very popular, and you want to enhance the packaging, you want to change it because you're doing slightly different things. But the one thing is, it's a bit like websites where adhering to the brand colors, the typefaces, the logo, and the styling allows you to do that. Never think that the packaging that you might do today will be what you're doing in a few years' time. It could quite well change as you go forward. So what was in the package? Well, it was the most lovely box from Tidings. And on the left, you can see the box, again, beautiful brand, lovely little label on the back to enclose that envelope. And then Neve has really carried the whole making a message or making a statement, message of thanks. How difficult would it be to put a card into your packaging currently, which says, I really appreciate your sale. Thanks for your support. Hope you enjoy the product or what you've just bought. And then the product itself, that beautiful simulator paper, which, as I say, you can get online now, and the lovely scarves which Neve produces. So I did receive it. It is fantastic, but I'm sure you would agree that it just has that wonderful thing that you're thinking, my goodness, look at this, isn't it absolutely class? Making it happen, well, I would encourage you, if you can, money is available, work with a graphic designer. The other thing you can do is identify packaging companies with experience in your area, and perhaps most of them will have a design facility. It's sometimes a way in which you can make things happen if budgets are tight, and they normally are. Look at other people. How do they do it? Who do you like in design terms, in making terms, that you can actually learn from? The big thing I would say is prototype your packaging and get samples. Don't be afraid to say, look, I need samples. I need to see what this is going to be, what it's going to look like, and set a packaging budget. I once had someone that told me they were spending 15 euros on a box, and I had to pick myself up off the floor because the product being sold was about 45, and I thought, not much room for profit in that. But we all learn, and all I would say is that setting a packaging budget, it may be that you take it in as part of the costing of the overall product, etc., and you try to limit financially getting into areas where it's costing you an absolute fortune just to put the thing in a box. Include a leaflet, postcard, something to promote your range, and something that other customers may be interested in. What you're looking for is perhaps they give it to a friend or a relative or whatever. It may encourage people to go online and sign up for the mailing list. That's what you want. And what I would say is test your packaging. Maybe get half a dozen samples, put something in and send it to a few different locations and really see how the thing works and what condition it comes back in or is received in. I think that could really inform you perhaps as you move forward. Packaging companies, since the whole Brexit thing, I apologize, this list is not massive, but there are some of the people that I've come across. I know there are issues at the minute with getting stuff from UK into Ireland because of Brexit and so forth, but some of these guys, McKeown's Print, for example, have an office both in Belfast and in Dublin. And if all you're looking for is a starting point, they may be somebody that you could talk to. I also think Pinterest is brilliant in terms of reference and a wee bit of a punch and a push in terms of making things happen. Thank you very much for listening.
Colin, thank you very much for that. When I'm looking at craft product and the fact that people aren't able to touch it and see it in person at the moment, what comes to mind to me is the most important thing is someone's digital presence, the standard of the copy that constitutes part of that digital presence, the quality of the photography, and the quality of the packaging. Now, those are things that really, if possible, maker, designer, craftspeople should be incorporating into the overall product cost. Now, that would be my thinking of it. And I think that it's attractive and part of the whole package, as well as being functional, is really important. But I have a contrary view that I'd like you to discuss. And I find it very interesting that someone has said that during COVID, and I don't want you to take this personally, Colin, that during COVID and post-COVID, the package must be unattractive to thieves. The actual package needs to arrive. The item is lost or damaged in customs and upon their inspection, and it arrives undamaged. Discuss, Colin, please. So I think if I summarize, it doesn't matter a fiddler's what it comes in, as long as it gets there safely and the product inside is wonderful. Now, I think this person might be trying to be agent provocateur for the afternoon as well. And as a craftsperson, I have great respect and I'm very fond of them, but it'll give us something to discuss.
I think like most things in life, you can, there's always an opposite feeling. I think a lot of people in our industry are perhaps in that area where they're trying, stuff is bought perhaps as a gift. It's bought as maybe a special thing. And I accept totally we're in a world where people aren't being encouraged to open doors to postmen or delivery drivers or what have you. I cannot say I can accept that view, and as part of a design process, yes, I'm not suggesting for 1 minute
that everything should be beautiful and shouty and look at me, I'm the nicest pack on the block. Yes, there are some horrendous stories around deliveries ending up over hedges and in bins and places that no one ever thought to look at. But I like to think that in this particular industry, and I'm not suggesting for 1 minute that packaging can't be utilitarian. IKEA's packaging is designed that way. It's very much about the function, very much about here's what we're trying to protect, here's what we're trying to get to you, this is the way we're doing it. The stuff, the apothecary stuff that I showed earlier, you know, that's quite straightforward, quite simple. But I think no matter where you are in this situation, as part of your research, perhaps look at where your products are going all over the world. You have to consider COVID at the minute. But I still think there will be, in this new future, a physical presence at some stage. And I think packaging can play that defining part where someone will buy the product or they will not, based on the complete story that you're portraying. So I probably haven't fully answered it. I would suggest, you know.
Well, I'm gonna take that up a bit, right? Because the way I would view it, having worked with makers for a really, really long time, is when you're making absolutely beautiful work, and say I was buying a piece of jewelry as a gift, handmade Irish jewelry, and say as a gift to my mother or something for Christmas, and I wanted to spend maybe 80 euros, okay? The gift itself is really important, but to me what is really important as well is that that's tied in to the person's website, so that she could maybe buy earrings to match a necklace or whatever, and right through to the package that it arrives in. I think that when we are selling works that are representing artistic integrity, added value from beginning to end, from your window to the world as your digital presence, right through to the actual way in which that product arrives on someone's doorstep, I would think it is really, really important. So on that note, because I don't want to hog all time, we have a number of people who are asking, do you have recommendations on various suppliers? Now, what I'm going to suggest on that level is that maybe you would talk to people afterwards, because I don't want you to put one supplier above another. But we could maybe tease out eco packaging suppliers who are based in Ireland that actually produce the packaging in Ireland. It's a big consideration for this person's business to use local and eco packaging, but the cost is very high compared to overseas. So do you see a way around that, Colin?
Yeah, I think what you've alluded to, Emer, I'd be more than happy to try and get maybe some list. Now, the caveat to this is that I haven't used all these people. These are people who purely, like the rest of you, I've looked online. I have experience of McKeown's in Belfast. I don't have experience of McKeown's in Dublin, for example. But I know that one of the big difficulties is just finding people, and it might be useful just to put together a list, which is a starting point, but I will not get into I can recommend or I can't, because to be honest, I just don't know. I know Tinware Company in the UK, fantastic organization, will send you samples, brilliant to deal with. Haven't a clue what it's like now that we have the issues around Brexit. I know that Move, for example, have something on their website which is very much, if you're ordering from Republic of Ireland, there will be perhaps some sort of duty which will need to be paid on the order. So a lot of this stuff, as you know, Emer, hasn't really been thought through yet. And we're hoping that these little idiosyncrasies of the deal can be perhaps managed in time.
Exactly. And just on the lovely Brexit topic, to annoy all of you, down the line in a few weeks, I'm having a Brexit talk on a number of different disciplines. So Brexit hasn't gone away, and it's still very much on our agenda. I think what can be useful as well is if people, say from another discipline, make recommendations to people who aren't their competitors, which is quite useful. And I have a suggestion here about eco packaging. Ecoland, Colin Paper in Dublin have some. I don't know if that's a help to people. I have someone thanking me for bringing up the topic of parcels being chucked over the hedge and beautiful packaging being spoiled, not to mention the work that's actually within the package. Now, I think that doesn't stop us from always keeping up the best standard. I mean, I know this is happening, but I'd like to think that, you know, 80% of items are going to arrive in a reasonable state of repair. Okay, my friend here who was saying about things going over the hedge and in functional rather than aesthetic, he recently mailed a 15,000 euro piece to London for a small package in an unattractive small package, but maybe he's making an art skill of that itself. It arrived quickly and my repeat client was delighted. Now, I don't know whether one gets to the stage where a piece is of such high value that the functionality of the packaging takes over from the actual aesthetic, because I have received and transported works of art for people in the most horrendous looking bubble wrap and unaesthetic creation. And I mean, they could have been multiple, like this person Dan's referring to, multiple thousands within, you know. So I suppose that's what we've got to do. It's when the packaging becomes part of the experience. And I'll go back to my light example of, if I'm buying a gift for someone and I'm spending a certain amount of money, I'd like the packaging to be part of the experience. I think that we should look at. Now, we have also this part, someone's on the other side. If you post something for 15K, you might even want to consider hand delivering by courier to ensure the packaging is not spoiled. Yeah, and particularly if it's in Bilbao or somewhere and there wasn't COVID, wouldn't it be really nice to go over and see that the client actually receives it? But we're not all in that marketplace, and some of us are happy not to be in that marketplace because there's quite kind of high level of demand there. Okay, do you think over branding a box disincentivize people to keep the box and reuse it? You know, what do you think of that, Colin?
I always think less is more.
Okay.
Mies van der Rohe, that's what he talked about. And I just think when you're designing a box, you have a number of facets to it, and each of those facets can be left clear. The web address might go on, etc., etc. I just think that's where working with a designer, you can get to that stage when you just know that it's right. I think the other thing that I would really, really like to say is that always remember that when you put boxes together, and you see this a lot in supermarkets, on the food counter, for example, where you have all the, you know, the soup cans or whatever working together. You can do similar things with packaging in the craft world, where when you have them, you know, a similar, that Apothecary thing, for example, when you put those little square boxes together, it gives you wonderful shelf presence in terms of when you physically get back into retailers. Doesn't always work, but sometimes it does work. And it's one of the elements of packaging which I think you can play around with. So if you're asking me, can you overbrand? I think if all you're going to do is stamp the logo on it, that's not really branding. Branding is about emotions. It's about saying something different. So I think you underestimate what you can do with a brand if you think it's just a matter of, we'll stick the logo on every side and that'll be it. But again, less is more. You'll know when you see it.
Okay, I have a very interesting one here, or maybe I just find it interesting, and I'm going to tag something onto it as well. Laura is saying, is it best to always send in gift packaging or to ask the customer if they want a gift box or not for environmental reasons? And can I add to that something that you might think is very naff? the environmental reasons are much more important. But could one offer the, you know, if you want the box, your package is going to be €4 more? Or, I don't know. What do you think of those concepts?
I think that's a brilliant question, and Laura is absolutely on the money in
Yeah.
the opinion. I think one of the things I sometimes see on websites is no mention of packaging other than it's going to come in a box. And if I was buying a gift, going back to user experience, I would perhaps like to see what the box would look like. And I think Laura is absolutely right that you could offer customization as long as you can make it happen. And you could offer an upgrade on a gift packaging version of what you do. So absolutely, but I would caution, unless you can make it happen fairly easily, you could get up or you could get caught up in, oh, only 3 people have asked for the special boxes and we've got 25 people need the ordinary boxes. So the value, the commercialization of what you can do, I think could be brilliant. And again, another element of your brand and your service and your product. But caution is always make sure you can do it easily. The wee Polaroid I showed, that's pretty easy. So you could say happy birthday, Paddy, or whatever, you know, a deer from Mayo, or whatever it happens to be. Simple things. Could go into a slightly more lavish box, but then you would be accused of the environmental lobby of, you know, are you moving into making it too fancy, etc., etc. Do what makes sense, but the idea behind upselling packaging, absolutely, you know, go for it.
Okay, we have a good comment here. Someone says that she always posts item in discreet packages, not advertising the content externally to the postal service, you know, and keep the website, etc., for the intended recipient. Customers still get the unboxing experience, the wow factor on opening.
Yeah.
And I definitely take that, but I come back to if I were sending a gift to someone and I had a certain amount of money to spend, I would like it nicely packaged and reflecting the maker's brand and values and ethos. Whereas if I were buying a piece of high-end ceramics, you know, I'd probably be so excited that it came intact that I wouldn't care if it was in a 50-meter ball of bubble wrap. But I suppose it depends on the product, does it? Or, you know?
Yeah. You know, a lot of phones, for example, which are, you know, let's be honest, an iPhone's about £1,000, really, for certain iPhones, and increasingly now they're being delivered by one courier, and they have the contract for that. So if you're dealing with things that are very high value, and I absolutely accept that sending things in envelopes or boxes that don't give, you know, the impression of what's inside, it might be worth looking at a courier who can facilitate those sorts of sales around the world for you. You might pay a bit more, but you would pass it on to the client in terms of making sure that this element or this item got to them in pristine condition.
Yeah, we have a nice comment here. Is unattractive outer packaging does not preclude an aesthetically rewarding internal packaging scenario.
Absolutely. Absolutely agree.
Yeah, and Brita is also echoing that. You know, it's better to surround a piece in a decorative box with the plain packaging outside for security reasons. You know, and then we have some, exactly. This is exactly the point. And my friend who was worried about customs and security and theft, and he's dead right, has a really witty remark here with the Hope Diamond was mailed from the UK to the US. So there we go. I'd like to take you up, Colin, on on the eco packaging suppliers, and if you were to go and do some work on that, with the caveat that some of them you may not have experienced, and then I'll put the various makers who are interested that in touch with you.
I mean, most of them, you know, it's as important to them as it is to the end users that, you know, they're seen to be using materials which are environmentally friendly, etc., etc. So I would say, and I hope I'm not wrong, I will apologize if I am, but I would say most of the packaging companies are probably ahead of that curve, because the lobby around the environment is huge, and they understand the importance that they play, in the same way that fashion industry is being sort of, you know, criticized because of the amount of waste, and now you have a lot of makers who are trying to retrace those steps and make it more sympathetic with the environment. That'll be going on in packaging as well. The Easter egg scenario of a few years ago, where the boxes were this size and then the Easter egg was that size. I mean, hopefully those days have gone. You know.
Yeah, yeah, and really, you know, keeping the cost down as much as we can. And I call it the exterior, not necessarily a package that's going to avoid theft, but that the exterior, be it our website, the photography on our website, the content of the English on our website, in as most a cost-effective way as we possibly can, has to reflect the outstanding standard of everyone who's listening to today's products. And apropos of that, that's why we've been looking at things like the e-commerce boot camp, looking at packaging, looking at not necessarily lifting our game, because an awful lot of have your game lifted, but to make sure that we're maintaining a standard as best possible that reflects the wonderful aesthetic of your products. And that's really it, because there are people now who are being introduced to craft and design through COVID, who have certain expectations that they mightn't have the confidence, or that they might expect it to come in a certain way. So I'm not saying that we copy Marks and Spencer's packaging, but that it is a reflection of the aesthetic that you're all attaining at such a high standard. That would be my comments, and I won't go on about it anymore. So, Colin, with that, I'd really like to thank you. There are a lot of thanks coming in from everybody. We've got, thank you very, very much. Okay, my friend again is saying that packaging companies are on their knees these days. On the this last day we had, it was about customer relationships. Can your product support the cost of that relationship? My goodness, that's a very heavy philosophical thought for everyone. So I'm going to put everyone away with that thought for today. Can your product support the costs of that relationship? Okay. Now, there are certain craft workers that I've collected over my 1,000 years on the planet, and I really don't care if it turns up and what it turns up in, but you know, I'm really into the work, and I think we do need to bear in mind that sometimes these are gifts, and person's being introduced to you and introduced to your aesthetic, and you want them to go onto your website, and you want them to encourage their friends to buy your work. So that's it. And some people buying work don't have the confidence, you know, that the aesthetic packaging is part of building up their confidence. And anyway, you're getting loads of thanks, inspiring, and it was really appreciated. So with that, I'm going to say goodbye to everyone for this afternoon. And Colin, thank you very much for your time. Someone just said it was incredibly enjoyable and informative. So thank you very much. Thanks, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye.
All right.